My name's Ethan Hayes, I'm 29, and I work as a forensic data analyst in Chicago. My specialty is tracking hidden patterns in financial information, finding connections others miss. It's a job that demands patience, precision, and above all, a healthy dose of suspicion. 10 years had passed since my mom died in a car accident. My dad, devastated, found solace in Victoria Sterling, an elegant 55-year-old woman he met at a charity event. They got married 2 years later. I had my reservations, but I wanted to see my dad happy again. Victoria was always interesting. Perfect smile, sweet words, but there was something in her eyes that never quite convinced me. As a forensic analyst, you develop a sixth sense for inconsistencies. And Victoria was a walking inconsistency. She constantly underestimated me. Ethan and his numbers, she'd say with that condescending smile. Always so serious, always analyzing everything. She thought my analytical mind was just an obsession with spreadsheets. She never imagined my ability to detect anomalies extended far beyond financial data. A month ago, my dad vanished. He just disappeared after leaving for a morning walk in Lincoln Park. The Chicago police treated it as a missing persons case, but Victoria was strangely calm. Too calm for a worried wife. That's when I started investigating on my own. Accessing my dad's bank accounts revealed strange movements in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, changes to insurance policies, modifications to his will. Patterns that didn't fit my dad's conservative financial behavior. Last week, Victoria called me. "Ethan, darling, how about a family dinner to celebrate our wedding anniversary?" Her voice had that artificial sweetness I knew so well. Something was wrong. My dad had been missing for a month and she wanted to celebrate. I arrived at the house in Winnetka on Friday at 7 p.m. The table was set for 3. "Where's Dad?" I asked. Victoria sighed dramatically. "Oh, darling, you know how he's been unstable. Decided to take a trip to clear his head. But life goes on, doesn't it?" Unstable. My dad, a retired Boeing engineer, as methodical as a Swiss watch. Unstable. That was like saying Lake Michigan had dried up. During dinner, Victoria was especially upbeat. She talked about plans to renovate the house, about the new life she was building. Every word confirmed my suspicions. She was planning a future without my dad. Then came the moment that changed everything. "A special toast to my dear stepson," Victoria said, handing me a glass of red wine. Her eyes gleamed with an intensity I'd never seen before. It wasn't affection. It was anticipated triumph. I looked at the liquid. Years of analyzing forensic evidence had taught me to observe minimal details. There was a thin film on the surface of the wine, almost imperceptible, a slight difference in viscosity. My heart pounded, but my mind went cold. As Victoria turned to get her own glass, I did something that saved my life. In a quick, silent movement, I swapped our glasses. She turned back, smiling, and raised the glass that had originally been mine. "To family," she said. "To the truth," I replied, looking directly into her eyes. We drank, and then I waited. The first 30 minutes passed normally. Victoria kept talking about her plans, about how the house needed renovations, about how some investments would pay off nicely in the future. Every word was a disguised confession. I already knew what to expect. My experience analyzing fraud cases had taught me the most common methods. Fast-acting sedatives, substances that cause convenient accidents, drugs that mimic heart attacks or strokes. Victoria had chosen something subtle, something that would render me unconscious long enough to, what? Forge my signature on documents, take me somewhere isolated? The possibilities were all disturbing, but I wasn't unprepared. In the weeks prior, ever since I started suspecting Victoria, I'd taken precautions. I'd made digital copies of all my dad's financial documents, kept bank statements in a safe, and shared my suspicions with David Kellerman, the family lawyer for over 20 years. David initially thought I was being paranoid, but he agreed to keep the documents safe. I also installed a recording app on my cell phone, set for voice activation. Our entire dinner conversation was being recorded. Additionally, I sent a programmed message to David. If you don't receive confirmation from me by 11 p.m., initiate Plan B. David knew what that meant. 45 minutes after the toast, Victoria started showing the first symptoms. First, a slight sheen of sweat on her forehead. Then her speech began to slur. She tried to hide it, getting up to fetch more wine from the kitchen. But I noticed her movements were uncoordinated. "Are you okay, Victoria?" I asked with feigned concern. I'm feeling a little dizzy," she said, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Must be the wine, or the heat." It was December in Chicago. There was no heat. 10 minutes later, Victoria collapsed. Literally. She fell from her chair and hit her face on the mahogany dining table she was so proud of. The sound was dry, definitive. Blood trickled from her nose as she convulsed on the dining room floor. I called 911, perfectly playing the part of the concerned stepson. "My stepmother collapsed during dinner. Please send an ambulance to 1247 Sheridan Road, Winnetka." While waiting for the paramedics, I made the second most important call of my life. David answered on the first ring. "David, it's Ethan. Victoria's being taken to the hospital. Initiate everything now. Court order for a full toxicology screen. House sealed. All accounts in her name frozen. It's our only shot." David, experienced in corporate litigation, understood immediately. "I'm calling Judge Patterson right now. Are you sure about this, Ethan?" "She tried to drug me, David. I swapped the glasses. The substance is in her system now. It's our proof. Highland Park Hospital is only 10 minutes from Winnetka. I arrived right after the ambulance." Victoria was semi-conscious, muttering disconnected words. When she saw me, her eyes widened. Even drugged, she understood what had happened. "Ethan," she whispered with difficulty. It was you. "It was you, Victoria," I replied calmly. "You did this to yourself." The doctors rushed her to the emergency room. Dr. Martinez, the attending physician, pulled me aside. "Her vitals are strange. Low heart rate, dilated pupils, diminished reflexes. Do you know if she took any medication today?" "Not that I know of, doctor. She seemed normal during dinner." Technically, I wasn't lying. 2 hours later, David arrived at the hospital with documents in hand. I got it. Court order for a full tox screen and a search warrant for the house. Judge Patterson found the situation interesting. Interesting how? A woman with a history of recent changes to wills and insurance policies, whose husband disappeared a month ago, now hospitalized for mysterious poisoning in the presence of her stepson, who is also a beneficiary. The judge said it sounded like a movie script. At 3 in the morning, we received the preliminary results. Rohypnol, a dose that would have left me unconscious for hours, long enough for whatever Victoria had planned. The nurse who handed me the papers shook her head in disapproval. "This drug is terrible. Mainly used for, well, you know." I knew, all right, and now I had physical proof. The next day, while Victoria was still sedated at the hospital, the forensic team scoured the house in Winnetka. They found much more than we expected. A bottle of Rohypnol hidden in her bathroom cabinet. Falsified documents with my dad's signature. And most shocking of all, a $2 million life insurance policy in my dad's name, altered 3 weeks before he disappeared. David called me, euphoric. "Ethan, we have a solid case. Victoria not only tried to drug you, but she forged documents and defrauded insurance. But there's one more thing." "What is it?" "The police found evidence that your dad may not have disappeared voluntarily." The discovery about my dad came through Detective Sarah Chen from the Chicago PD's Missing Persons Division. She called me Saturday morning, her voice heavy with gravity. "Mr. Hayes, I need to speak with you in person. We found something in the Des Plaines Forest Preserve." My stomach dropped. Des Plaines is only 40 minutes from Winnetka, a perfect spot to hide evidence. "What did you find?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Human remains. Buried shallow but hidden well enough not to be accidentally discovered. The body was well preserved due to the winter cold. My dad had been dead for a month. While Victoria feigned concern and planned celebrations, He was buried in a shallow grave in the middle of the woods. Identification was confirmed through dental records on Monday. Robert Hayes, 62, retired engineer, loving father. Cause of death, antifreeze poisoning. Ethylene glycol, to be precise. A substance that initially causes symptoms similar to drunkenness, then coma and death. Perfect for disguising a murder as an accident. As these revelations unfolded, Victoria was desperate. From the hospital, she tried to call me dozens of times. When I finally answered, her voice was different. No longer the calculated sweetness from before, but pure panic. "Ethan, darling, we need to talk. There's a terrible misunderstanding happening." "There's no misunderstanding, Victoria. You tried to drug me, you killed my dad, you forged documents. This is crazy. I loved your father. Someone is trying to frame me." Her voice went up an octave. "You don't understand, Ethan. I'm being manipulated by people who want our inheritance." Our inheritance. Even now, she couldn't stop thinking about the money. "The Rohypnol was in your blood, Victoria, not mine. How do you explain that?" Silence. "Then, someone must have put it in my drink, too. We were both poisoned." It was pathetic. Even with irrefutable evidence, she kept trying to manipulate the situation. On Tuesday, Victoria's lawyer, a man named Marcus Webb, called me. Webb had a reputation for defending wealthy clients in Chicago, regardless of the morality of their cases. "Mr. Hayes, my client is the victim of a conspiracy. You are defaming an innocent woman who lost her husband and is now being persecuted by her stepson. This could be considered harassment." "Mr. Webb," I replied calmly, "your client tried to murder me. She has Rohypnol in her blood as proof. She forged financial documents. And now we know my father was found dead with antifreeze in his system. If that's defamation, then the truth is defamatory." Webb was silent for a moment. "Experienced lawyers know when a case is lost." "We are prepared to reach a settlement," he finally said. "My client is willing to divide the assets equitably if you withdraw the accusations." "There's no settlement, Mr. Webb. There's only justice." The pressure on Victoria mounted when the story leaked to the press. The Chicago Tribune ran a piece with the headline, "Winnetka Harris accused of poisoning husband and stepson." The Chicago Sun-Times was more direct. "Killer stepmom tries to eliminate family for inheritance." The narrative was perfect for the tabloids. Older woman marries rich widower, kills husband, tries to kill stepson, gets caught by her own trap. Social media exploded with theories and speculation. Victoria, still in the hospital under medical observation, tried one last gambit. She sent me a handwritten letter delivered by a nurse. "Dear Ethan, I know you're hurt and confused, but we need to be a family. Your father wouldn't want to see us fighting like this. I'm willing to forget this terrible misunderstanding if you do the same. We can live as a normal family, sharing equally everything your father left behind. After all, we both lost someone we loved." I read the letter 3 times. It was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. She was trying to make me feel guilty for pursuing the truth, as if the search for justice was a childish tantrum. My response was simple. I tore up the letter in front of the nurse and said, "Tell Miss Sterling she'll get her answer in court." On Thursday, Victoria was formally charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and fraud. Bail was denied due to flight risk. The prosecutor, Jennifer Walsh, explained that we had a solid case. "I rarely see evidence this clear," Walsh said. "She literally poisoned herself with the murder weapon. It's like a mugger tripping over their own gun." The trial was set for March. Over the following weeks, more evidence emerged. Victoria had researched poisoning methods online. She bought antifreeze from 3 different stores to avoid suspicion. She changed my dad's bank account passwords days before the murder, but the most devastating evidence came from an unexpected source. My dad's dentist's secretary remembered Victoria calling to schedule an emergency appointment for him 2 weeks before he disappeared. She said he was in terrible pain and needed immediate treatment, the woman told Detective Chen. But when he arrived, he wasn't in any pain. He seemed confused, a little disoriented. Victoria had been testing the effects of the antifreeze, adjusting the dosage. My dad had been his own wife's guinea pig for weeks before the final murder. The reality was even more sinister than I had imagined. The trial began on March 15th at the Cook County Criminal Court. The media turned the case into a spectacle. Reporters from across the country came to Chicago to cover what CNN called the poisoning stepmother case. Victoria arrived at court, wearing a conservative black dress, trying to appear the grieving widow. But there was no hiding the desperation in her eyes. 3 months in pretrial detention had destroyed her carefully constructed facade. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh began with a devastating opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will hear about a woman who killed out of pure greed, who poisoned her husband for weeks, who forged documents, who attempted to murder her stepson when he began to uncover the truth, and who was caught in her own trap when the stepson, an experienced forensic analyst, swapped the poisoned glasses." The evidence piled up like an avalanche. The toxicology report showing rohypnol in Victoria's blood, the forged documents with my dad's signature, the online searches about poisons, the antifreeze purchases, the call history to alter insurance policies and wills. When it was my turn to testify, I maintained the same calm that saved me that fateful night. "Mr. Hayes," Walsh began, "what led you to swap the glasses?" My professional experience taught me to observe patterns and anomalies. There was a strange film on the surface of the wine, a different viscosity. As a forensic analyst, I knew that dissolved sedatives can leave those signs. "And why didn't you confront the defendant immediately?" "Because I needed proof. An accusation without evidence would have just been my word against hers. By swapping the glasses, she would become the living evidence of her own attempted murder." The defense attorney, Marcus Webb, tried to discredit me during cross-examination. "Mr. Hayes, isn't it true that you were always jealous of the relationship between your father and my client?" "No." "Isn't it true that you wanted the entire inheritance for yourself?" "If I wanted the inheritance, Mr. Webb, I wouldn't have swapped the glasses. I would have let her kill me and taken everything through a legal will." The jury chuckled. Even the judge hid a smile. Webb tried another approach. "How can we be sure you didn't plant evidence? You had access to the house, you know forensic methods." "Mr. Webb," I responded calmly, "I didn't force Victoria to buy antifreeze from 3 different stores. I didn't make her research poisons online. I didn't put rohypnol in her own blood. She did all of that herself." The most dramatic moment came when Victoria decided to testify in her own defense. It was a fatal strategic error. "I loved Robert," she said, crying. "I would never harm him. Ethan was always jealous, always tried to separate us. He made up this whole story because he wanted the inheritance." Walsh rose for cross-examination like a predator who had found wounded prey. "Ms. Sterling, can you explain why you searched how to poison someone without leaving a trace on Google?" I was researching for a book I was writing." "What book? You never mentioned being a writer." Silence. "Can you explain why you bought antifreeze from 3 different stores in the same week?" "My car was having problems." "3 different cars, Mrs. Sterling? Because the receipts show purchases for 3 distinct vehicles." Victoria began to contradict herself, to stammer, to invent increasingly absurd excuses. It was painful to watch, but necessary. The jury deliberated for just 2 hours. Guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of attempted murder, guilty of fraud. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the verdict was read, Victoria collapsed. She literally fell from her chair, screaming that she had been wronged, that I had orchestrated everything. 2 bailiffs had to carry her out of the courtroom. I didn't feel triumph, just a deep peace, and finally, permission to truly mourn my father. 6 months later, I used part of the recovered inheritance to found the Hayes Foundation for Missing Persons, an organization that offers free forensic analysis to families looking for missing people. My experience could help others find their own truths. The work gave me purpose. In the last 2 years, we've helped solve 17 disappearance cases. Some ended with happy reunions. Others, like my father's, only brought the truth. But the truth, I discovered, is always better than uncertainty. Last year, I got an unexpected call. Victoria had tried to appeal her sentence for the third time. The prosecutor handling the appeal called me, almost laughing. "Ethan, you won't believe it. She still thinks you're just a naive kid who got lucky. She told the judge you weren't smart enough to orchestrate something so elaborate." I smiled. Even after everything, Victoria never understood the fundamental lesson. Underestimating someone is the first step toward your own destruction. The human mind, no matter how brilliant at scheming evil, always leaves traces. It always makes mistakes. And the truth, no matter how well buried, always finds a way to the surface. My dad taught me that honesty and persistence are the most powerful weapons anyone can have. Victoria proved him right. If you've made it this far, you probably recognize that justice isn't always swift, but when it arrives, it's definitive. Like this story, if it resonated with you, share it with anyone who needs to know that truth always prevails. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice being served. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where your professional experience saved you from something terrible? Your stories are always welcome here.